The ancient Olympic Games, first held in 776 BCE, were a significant part of Greek culture. Unlike the modern Olympics, where athletes wear uniforms, the ancient Greeks chose to compete naked. This practice wasn't just about the simplicity of the attire, it had deep cultural, religious, and social significance. The tradition of competing naked, or gymnos, also had religious roots. The games were held in honor of Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, and were seen as a way to please him. These games weren't just about winning or losing. They were a sacred event that united the Greek world in a shared celebration of athletic prowess. Interestingly, the decision to compete without clothing also had practical reasons. In ancient times, clothing was often heavy and cumbersome, especially for the intense physical activities of the games. For running, wrestling, and the discus throw, being free of garments gave athletes a more natural range of motion and allowed them to perform at their highest potential. There was also the concern that clothing could weigh down the athletes, limiting their performance. The Greek word gymnasium actually comes from the word gymnos, reflecting the idea that training in the nude was a fundamental part of Greek culture. Athletes would train in the gymnasium, where they practiced various sports without any clothes. This wasn't just about physical training, but also about mental discipline, as the Greeks believed that in order to achieve greatness, one had to strip away all distractions, including clothing. It's also worth noting that the Olympics were an exclusively male event. Women were not allowed to participate in the Games or even attend, except for a separate festival called the Heraean Games, which was specifically for women and focused on running events. The absence of women from the ancient Olympics reinforced the idea that the Games were an arena for male competition, where strength and power were displayed in their most raw form. The athletes themselves, in many cases, were revered as heroes in Greek society. Winners of the Games were celebrated, and their victories brought pride to their city-states. Competing naked was part of the journey to greatness, as the athlete had to expose their body not just physically, but also symbolically, showing that they were willing to give their all for their city and their gods. One of the most famous incidents related to the tradition of competing naked was the story of Orsippus of Megara. Orsippus was the first recorded athlete to compete naked, and this became an iconic moment in Olympic history. This moment became a turning point in the Games, and from that point forward, it was customary for all athletes to compete in the nude. The nudity in the ancient Olympics also symbolized the egalitarian nature of the Games. In an era where Greek society was stratified and often divided by wealth, social status, and politics, the Olympics offered a rare chance for individuals from different backgrounds to compete on an equal footing. There were no distinguishing marks, such as clothing or armor, to show an athlete's wealth or social standing. When they stepped onto the field, they were simply athletes, no different from one another in appearance, only in skill. Interestingly, athletes in the ancient Olympic Games would often oil their bodies before competing, which added another layer of tradition to the practice. The oil not only helped to protect the skin, but also made the athlete's muscles appear more defined, emphasizing the beauty of the human form. The process of oiling up was performed before events like the pentathlon, wrestling, and boxing, where the athletes were expected to be as physically imposing as possible. Another significant aspect of the ancient Olympics was the absence of medals. Instead of gold, silver, or bronze medals, winners were awarded a simple wreath of olive branches. The olive wreath was a symbol of honor and victory, closely associated with Zeus and the Greek gods. The ancient Olympic Games were held every 4 years in Olympia, a sacred site dedicated to Zeus. This location was central to the Games' religious and cultural significance. In addition to the athletic events, the Games included religious rituals, sacrifices to the gods, and festivals that celebrated Greek culture. The athletes competed not just for personal glory, but to honor the gods and to represent their city-state with pride. The tradition of competing naked in the ancient Olympics was so ingrained in Greek culture that even when the Games became more formalized and organized, the practice continued. As the Olympics grew in prestige and influence, the idea of competing naked became an enduring symbol of the pursuit of perfection in both body and spirit. For centuries, this tradition remained, and even though modern Olympic athletes now compete in clothing, the spirit of those ancient games continues to influence how we view athletic competition today. The legacy of the ancient Olympics and the tradition of competing naked serves as a reminder of the enduring connection between physical excellence and the cultural values of ancient Greece. While we no longer compete in the nude, the pursuit of athletic perfection, the celebration of physical beauty, and the respect for the gods that the ancient Olympics represented remain relevant in today's modern world. In the end, the ancient Olympic Games were not just about sports. They were a powerful reflection of Greek culture and philosophy. They celebrated the human body in its most natural state, focused on the importance of health, strength, and skill, and honored the gods who were believed to shape the fates of both athletes and nations. The tradition of competing naked was just one part of a larger cultural and religious phenomenon that united Greece in the spirit of competition, glory, and divine respect.